Have you ever noticed that some places seem completely harmless, yet every time you spend enough time there, you leave feeling smaller than when you arrived? Here's the uncomfortable truth. The greatest dangers in life aren't always people, they're environments. And according to psychology, the places you repeatedly expose yourself to quietly shape your beliefs, your ambition, your confidence, and ultimately your destiny. Most people believe success is about working harder, learning more, or finding the right opportunity. But Machiavelli would probably disagree. He understood something that most people still ignore today. Before you can build power and influence, you must first stop allowing the wrong environments to drain it. Because no matter how disciplined you are, no matter how talented you become, there are places that slowly erase your potential without you ever realizing it's happening. What's even more surprising is that these places aren't necessarily dangerous neighborhoods, war zones, or obvious traps. In fact, some of them may be your favorite cafe, your group of friends, your hometown, your workplace, or even your own living room. That's what makes them so dangerous. They don't attack your future overnight. They slowly negotiate with it, one comfortable decision at a time. The scary part is that most people never recognize the pattern. They confuse familiarity with safety. They mistake emotional comfort for progress. They surround themselves with people who applaud every excuse instead of every improvement, and years later they wonder why nothing has changed. Psychology calls this environmental conditioning. Machiavelli simply recognized it as one of the easiest ways for ordinary people to surrender control of their own lives. In this video, you'll discover 7 dangerous places that silently destroy ambition, weaken self-mastery, manipulate social dynamics, and strip away your ability to think independently. More importantly, you'll learn how emotional detachment allows you to recognize these invisible traps before they shape your future. Some of these places may surprise you. One of them may completely change the way you see your own life. And once you recognize them, it becomes almost impossible to look at your world the same way again. Most people believe they need more support, more understanding, and more people telling them they're right. It sounds comforting, doesn't it? But according to timeless psychology, comfort can quietly become one of the most dangerous addictions a person ever develops. There's a subtle difference between encouragement and emotional dependence, and that's exactly where countless ambitions quietly disappear. Machiavelli understood that people rarely lose their power and influence because of one catastrophic mistake. More often, they lose it because they're surrounded by voices that reward weakness instead of responsibility. The trap feels warm, friendly, and completely harmless until years have passed. Someone trapped inside what could be called a sympathy circle rarely notices what's happening. Every complaint receives validation. Every failure gets an excuse. Every disappointment is blamed on bad luck, unfair bosses, toxic society, or difficult circumstances. At first, that sounds compassionate, but eventually, the brain begins to expect sympathy instead of solutions. Psychology shows that repeated emotional validation without accountability rewires expectations. Instead of asking, "How can this be fixed?" the person starts asking, "Who will understand my pain today?" That tiny shift changes the direction of an entire life without making any noise. Imagine 2 friends who lose their jobs on the same day. One spends every evening talking about how unfair life is, while everyone around him nods in agreement. The other allows himself one difficult weekend, then begins updating his skills, reaching out to new contacts, studying social dynamics, and building opportunities he didn't have before. 6 months later, their lives barely resemble each other. The difference wasn't intelligence or luck. It was the environment each one chose to feed every single day. One consumed sympathy, the other consumed growth. The gap between those choices keeps expanding with time. One mentor once shared something that sounded almost cold the first time it was heard. Every conversation either increases personal strength or quietly negotiates it away. That doesn't mean someone should become emotionless or refuse empathy. Emotional detachment isn't about having no feelings. It's about refusing to let feelings become permanent addresses. There's wisdom in listening to pain, but there's danger in decorating a house inside it. The people who constantly invite others to remain victims rarely realize they're offering emotional comfort with an invisible price tag attached. This is why Machiavelli placed such enormous importance on surrounding oneself with people who elevate standards instead of lowering them. A powerful circle doesn't simply make someone feel better after failure. It makes failure uncomfortable enough that action becomes the obvious next step. That's the hidden role of honest friends, demanding mentors, and disciplined environments. They don't remove responsibility, they sharpen it. Real self-mastery begins the moment someone becomes more interested in uncomfortable truth than comfortable agreement. That's where genuine power and influence quietly starts growing. Ironically, leaving a sympathy circle often feels like betrayal to the people still living inside it. Suddenly, the person who stops complaining is called arrogant. The one pursuing bigger goals is labeled different. The one protecting time and energy somehow becomes selfish. Funny how growth always seems suspicious to those committed to staying still. Yet that's only the first invisible barrier. Because beyond the need for sympathy lies another illusion. One that convinces people they're succeeding, simply because others keep applauding them. Success has a strange way of disguising itself. Sometimes it doesn't arrive wearing expensive clothes, luxury cars, or public recognition. Instead, it hides inside applause that was never earned. Psychology explains that the human mind naturally seeks acceptance, and that's exactly why so many people mistake approval for progress. Machiavelli repeatedly warned that appearances can deceive not only others, but the person creating them. The most dangerous illusion isn't believing a lie told by someone else. It's believing the story that comfort whispers every single day. Many people spend years trying to impress those they consider powerful. They carefully choose their words, laugh at jokes they don't even find funny, and slowly reshape their personalities just to receive small signs of approval. At first, it feels like networking. Later, it becomes dependence. Instead of building their own power and influence, they begin borrowing confidence from people whose attention can disappear overnight. The problem isn't respecting successful people. The problem begins when someone's identity depends on being accepted by them rather than becoming valuable on their own. Another trap is becoming the biggest fish in a very small pond. It's comfortable to stay where everyone already admires existing skills. Compliments arrive easily, competition feels weak, and growth almost disappears without anyone noticing. Psychology calls this a form of complacency disguised as confidence. Real self-mastery demands something completely different. It asks a person to voluntarily enter rooms where they are not the smartest, the richest, or the most experienced. That's uncomfortable, but discomfort has always been one of the greatest teachers. Think about an athlete who refuses to compete against stronger opponents, because winning locally feels better than losing nationally. For a while, the trophies keep coming, and everyone celebrates. But behind the scenes, development slows to a crawl. The same happens in business, relationships, and social dynamics. Remaining surrounded only by people who never challenge ideas creates an invisible ceiling. Progress doesn't stop because of failure. It stops because success becomes too easy. Ironically, comfort often wears the mask of achievement. One experienced entrepreneur once admitted that the biggest leap in his career happened immediately after walking into meetings where he felt completely outmatched. At first, he barely spoke. He observed, he listened. He studied how disciplined people solved problems, negotiated, and made decisions under pressure. Instead of protecting his ego, he trained it to become curious. Emotional detachment allowed him to separate temporary embarrassment from long-term growth. That simple shift transformed insecurity into one of his greatest competitive advantages. Machiavelli understood that genuine influence is never built by collecting approval like trophies. It grows when a person becomes so committed to improvement that praise loses its ability to control decisions. The strongest individuals don't chase rooms where they feel important. They chase environments where they're forced to evolve. And once someone begins choosing growth over image, another uncomfortable truth starts to appear. Sometimes the greatest obstacle isn't status at all. It's the relationships and lifestyles quietly draining the future while pretending to offer stability. Before we continue, I need to tell you something. If everything you've heard so far feels uncomfortably familiar, if you've realized that the people around you, the need for approval, and the environments you choose are quietly shaping your future, then don't ignore that feeling. That's exactly why I created the Silent Influence Code, inspired by timeless Machiavellian principles and modern psychology. This isn't just another ebook. It's a practical, psychological playbook designed to help you stop seeking validation, master social dynamics, develop emotional detachment, build genuine power and influence, and cultivate the kind of self-mastery that makes people naturally respect you. These are principles you can apply immediately in your daily life, relationships, career, and every important interaction. If you're ready to stop being controlled by invisible forces and start becoming the one who understands the game everyone else is unconsciously playing, click the link in the pinned comment and get your copy today. It could completely change the way you see people and the way people see you. Not everything that steals a person's future arrives looking dangerous. Sometimes it smiles, says it cares, and even promises loyalty. That's what makes certain relationships so difficult to recognize. Psychology teaches that people naturally adapt to the expectations of those closest to them, often without realizing it. Machiavelli understood this long before modern science gave it a name. Every close relationship either strengthens self-mastery or slowly weakens it, and the effects usually appear so gradually that they feel completely normal. A toxic relationship isn't always loud or abusive. Sometimes it's simply built on constant distraction, subtle guilt, or endless compromise. One person dreams of building something meaningful, while the other quietly mocks discipline, ambition, or long-term thinking. Every time a new opportunity appears, there's a reason to postpone it. Every goal becomes too risky. Every improvement somehow creates tension instead of celebration. Over time, the relationship begins to consume energy that should have been invested in growth, leaving behind exhaustion disguised as love or loyalty. Then there's another invisible trap that psychology calls sunk cost thinking. People stay because they've already invested too much time, too many emotions, or too many years. They tell themselves, "I've come this far. I can't leave now." But time already spent is never a good reason to waste even more of it. Imagine continuing to wear a pair of shoes that injure your feet every day simply because they were expensive. It sounds absurd, yet countless people do exactly that with friendships, careers, and relationships that no longer serve their future. Money creates another prison that rarely gets enough attention. Many people work tirelessly not to build freedom, but to maintain an image. Bigger houses than they can afford, cars purchased to impress strangers they'll never truly know, designer clothes financed by tomorrow's paycheck. Social dynamics often reward appearances in the short term, but hidden debt quietly steals choices, peace of mind, and independence. Machiavelli understood that real power and influence belongs to those who control their resources, not to those controlled by their possessions. One financial advisor once shared a story about two neighbors. One drove a luxury car, but lived under constant pressure, avoiding bank notifications and hoping no unexpected bill would arrive. The other owned an older vehicle, invested consistently, learned valuable skills, and enjoyed the freedom to make bold career decisions because his finances weren't chained to appearances. Ironically, the second man looked less successful to outsiders, yet he possessed something far more valuable: options. Emotional detachment allowed him to value long-term freedom over short-term admiration. This is why truly strategic people regularly ask a difficult question: does this relationship, habit, or lifestyle expand my future or quietly shrink it? The answer isn't always comfortable, but it almost always reveals the next necessary decision. Once someone begins protecting their future instead of protecting appearances, another challenge inevitably emerges. Because even after leaving draining people behind, many still hesitate to make bold decisions, choosing safety over conviction when the moment to lead finally arrives. Most people assume that avoiding conflict is a sign of wisdom. They believe staying neutral will protect their reputation, preserve relationships, and keep life simple. It sounds reasonable until they realize that neutrality often comes with an invisible cost. Psychology reveals that people naturally trust those who stand for something more than those who constantly adjust to please everyone. Machiavelli understood that power and influence are rarely given to the person who avoids difficult decisions. More often, they belong to the one willing to accept the discomfort that leadership demands. Trying to satisfy everyone is like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter the grip, the faster everything slips away. A person who changes opinions, depending on the audience, may avoid criticism for a while, but they also lose something far more valuable: credibility. Friends become uncertain about where they truly stand. Colleagues hesitate to rely on them. Even family members begin to sense inconsistency. In social dynamics, people don't simply respect kindness, they respect clarity, and clarity requires the courage to disappoint others when necessary. Think about a manager who refuses to correct poor performance because he doesn't want anyone to dislike him. At first, the workplace feels peaceful. No uncomfortable conversations, no complaints. But slowly, the most dedicated employees lose motivation because effort and laziness receive the same treatment. Before long, productivity falls, respect disappears, and the leader wonders what went wrong. Ironically, the conflict he tried so hard to avoid only became larger because it was ignored. Difficult conversations rarely become easier with time. They simply become more expensive. One experienced negotiator once admitted that one sentence transformed the way he approached every important decision. If nobody disagrees with you, you're probably protecting comfort instead of pursuing truth. That idea stayed with him for years. Emotional detachment allowed him to separate temporary criticism from lasting consequences. Instead of asking whether people would approve, he began asking whether the decision aligned with his principles and long-term goals. Surprisingly, the more consistent he became, the more others trusted his judgment, even when they didn't agree with him. Machiavelli never suggested creating unnecessary enemies. His lesson was far more strategic. He understood that indecision creates confusion, while thoughtful conviction creates direction. Self-mastery isn't measured by the number of people who applaud every choice. It's measured by the ability to remain calm after making the right choice, even when applause never comes. People instinctively follow those whose actions match their words because certainty feels stronger than endless hesitation. Quiet confidence has a way of speaking before a single word is ever said. The irony is that many people finally find the courage to choose a direction, only to discover that something invisible keeps pulling them backward. Old streets, familiar faces, and comfortable routines begin whispering that nothing really needs to change. That's when they encounter one of the most underestimated obstacles to transformation: the invisible prison built by their own past. Some prisons don't have walls, bars, or locked doors. They're built from memories, familiar faces, old routines, and expectations that quietly follow a person wherever they go. Psychology suggests that human behavior is deeply shaped by environment, yet most people underestimate just how powerful that influence really is. Machiavelli understood that anyone seeking power and influence must eventually separate identity from familiarity. The greatest obstacle to becoming someone new is often the constant reminder of who everyone expects you to remain. A hometown can be full of wonderful memories, but it can also become a place where growth is silently resisted. People who have known someone since childhood often continue treating them as the insecure teenager they once were, even after years of change. Every ambitious goal is met with skepticism. Every new habit is called a phase. Every act of self-mastery is questioned because it doesn't fit the version of the person stored in everyone else's mind. Without realizing it, familiar environments begin rewarding consistency instead of transformation. Old friendships can create the same invisible pressure, not because old friends are bad people, but because relationships naturally seek balance. When one person starts reading more, exercising, building new skills, or thinking differently, the entire dynamic changes. Sometimes the response is encouragement. Other times it's subtle jokes, criticism disguised as humor, or constant invitations to return to old habits. Social dynamics are powerful that way. Every group develops an unwritten agreement about what is considered normal, and anyone who grows beyond that invisible line often faces resistance. Imagine planting a strong young tree in a tiny pot. At first, everything seems fine. The tree keeps growing, but eventually the roots run out of space. From the outside, it still looks healthy. Underneath, however, growth has already stopped. Many lives follow that exact pattern. The problem isn't talent or intelligence. It's remaining inside an environment that can no longer support expansion. Emotional detachment allows a person to appreciate their past without allowing it to dictate their future. Gratitude and distance can exist at the same time. One traveler once described the strange feeling of returning to his hometown after several years away. The streets looked identical, the conversations hadn't changed, and even the same complaints echoed through the cafes. For a brief moment, he felt himself slipping back into old habits without making a conscious decision. That's when he realized environments don't simply hold memories, they activate behaviors. From that day forward, he became intentional about the places he visited, the conversations he entertained, and the people who had regular access to his time and attention. Machiavelli knew that every meaningful transformation demands a willingness to leave something behind. Sometimes it's a city, sometimes it's a mindset, sometimes it's simply the need to be understood by everyone who remembers the old version of you. Freedom begins when a person stops asking for permission to evolve. And once those invisible chains are broken, one final decision remains. The choice between building a life around temporary comfort or around deliberate sovereignty. In the end, every meaningful life is shaped by a series of quiet decisions that almost nobody notices. There isn't always a dramatic turning point or a single life-changing moment. More often, transformation begins when someone becomes intentional about what they allow into their mind, their schedule, and their closest relationships. Psychology reminds us that every repeated choice reinforces an identity. Machiavelli understood that lasting power and influence are never accidental. They are built through deliberate habits, disciplined thinking, and the courage to reject what weakens the spirit. Choosing sovereignty doesn't mean isolating yourself from the world or distrusting everyone around you. It means becoming the guardian of your own standards. It means asking whether every friendship, every habit, every commitment, and every daily routine is moving you closer to the person you want to become. Some relationships deserve deeper investment, while others quietly demand too much and return too little. The wisest people aren't those with the largest social circles. They're the ones who know exactly who deserves a place within them. One simple exercise can reveal more than months of reflection. At the end of each week, write down the names of the 5 people with whom you spent the most time. Then ask 3 honest questions. After being around them, do you feel more disciplined or more distracted? More optimistic or more cynical? More committed to your goals or more willing to postpone them? Psychology and social dynamics often work beneath conscious awareness. Small influences repeated every day eventually shape extraordinary outcomes, for better or for worse. The same principle applies to environments. A home filled with constant noise, endless distractions, and negative conversations slowly conditions the mind to accept chaos as normal. On the other hand, even small, intentional changes can reinforce self-mastery. Reading for 20 minutes before bed instead of scrolling endlessly. Exercising before making excuses. Spending an hour learning a valuable skill instead of comparing your life to strangers online. None of these actions seem revolutionary on their own, yet together they create a completely different future. Great lives are rarely built through giant leaps. They're built through consistent direction. A seasoned mentor once said that discipline is simply remembering tomorrow while everyone else is negotiating with today. That idea captures the essence of emotional detachment. It isn't about becoming cold or indifferent. It's about refusing to sacrifice long-term freedom for temporary comfort. Every difficult decision made with clarity becomes an investment in future independence. Every unnecessary distraction rejected becomes another brick in the foundation of genuine confidence. Eventually, discipline stops feeling like effort and begins feeling like identity. Machiavelli's greatest lesson was never about manipulation for its own sake. It was about understanding human nature deeply enough to avoid becoming controlled by it. Those who master themselves become far less vulnerable to the opinions, expectations, and emotional currents that steer most people through life. True power and influence begin the moment someone chooses principles over convenience, purpose over comfort, and conscious action over passive reaction. That choice is available every single day, and every future version of a person is built from the decisions they make when no one is watching. You've just seen that the most dangerous places aren't always marked on a map. More often, they're hidden inside routines, relationships, habits, and environments that quietly shape who you become. The real question isn't whether these places exist. They do. The question is, how long you're willing to stay in them. Machiavelli understood that changing your future isn't just about making better decisions. It's about placing yourself where better decisions become easier to make. Psychology teaches the same lesson in a different way. Your environment is constantly influencing your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions, whether you notice it or not. That's why self-mastery begins the moment you become intentional about what and who you allow to influence your life. So take a moment and be brutally honest with yourself. Which of these dangerous places are you still visiting? Which relationships are quietly draining your ambition? Which habits are stealing your future one comfortable day at a time? And what would your life look like a year from now if you had the courage to walk away from them today? Real power and influence don't come from controlling other people. They come from refusing to let destructive environments control you. Every small decision you make after watching this video has the potential to change the direction of your life. The people who achieve extraordinary results aren't necessarily the smartest. They're often the ones who become ruthless about protecting their time, their focus, and their standards. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 7 dangerous places do you think is the hardest to escape, and why? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. If you enjoyed this video and want to keep learning the timeless principles of Machiavelli, psychology, social dynamics, emotional detachment, self-mastery, and power and influence, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next lesson. Remember, your future isn't decided by where you've been. It's decided by the environments you choose from this moment forward.